Hello out there in Lectureland, it's Deb Miller again. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about violence in the workplace. This is a brief lecture, so anyhow, we just want to talk a little bit about this. As a nurse, you're going to be at risk for harm from coworkers, patients, and families. There's a lot of literature on workplace incivility and lateral violence. Coworkers violent amongst themselves and to each other, hostile work environments. Workplace violence is about the second leading cause of occupational death in the United States. The nature of our job, healthcare, puts us at risk for workplace violence leading to injury or death. Maybe you got some outrageous patients or, combative patients that, take a swing at you and that sort of thing. Can you think of an area where that might be? That's right, some of your mental health facilities, but the ER, ICU, not everybody reacts the same way to certain medications, and so we have to be very careful with that, and you just got to be aware of your surroundings, okay? Let's talk a little bit about workplace violence. Nurses fail to report acts of violence because of the lack of understanding or a belief that nothing will happen. If you have never encountered a hostile person, do you know how to de-escalate the situation? Certainly you're going to approach them calmly. You never approach them alone, okay? But workplace violence is defined as violent acts including physical assaults and threats of assault directed at individuals at work or on duty. Violence is the intentional use of physical force that has a high likelihood or results in injury or death. Okay, now that includes verbal abuse, threats, unwanted sexual advances, physical assault, and murder. So some strategies regarding workplace violence. There are a lot of community agencies and community resources, and certainly if there's an area that has a high level of violence and has a history of, or if particularly this emergency room has a history of high levels of abuse and such, they're going to probably offer lots of intervention type programs, and there will be policies put in place and some self-awareness activities for the staff. Certainly your crisis intervention programs teaches the staff how to recognize escalating anger and the strategies to de-escalate the situation. Here are some signs of escalating anger. Someone who's pacing quite a bit, and you notice that their pacing perhaps picks up the pace, gets a little faster. Maybe they're using foul language, or they're cursing, they're raising their fists, they're threatening, they may even shout. But that's letting you know that the anger is starting to escalate. You need to be sure you know where security is and that you're getting some help here. You always approach someone who's very angry very calmly. You avoid arguing with them. You don't try to handle a violent person by yourself, okay? That's very important. Don't do that by yourself, okay? And again, a lot of hospitals and areas have organizational policies. They may have the special code called overhead that lets others know that there's a violent patient, and that's to help call for security or call for other members of the healthcare team that help support that. Self-awareness programs are where we're taught how to protect ourselves. Never walk to the car by yourself at dark or even in the daylight. If you're in a very high violent, high crime district, you're always going to walk out with someone. And if you're uncomfortable, or you feel like somebody's following you, you need to scream and get security, but always ask security or somebody to go with you if you've got to walk to your car. Be very aware of your surroundings, and, when I walk to my car at night, I always have my keys in my hand so I can push my car alarm if I need to. Of course, nobody going to mail me, but anyhow, keep your keys handy and be aware of where your purse is and if somebody's following you, but you don't put yourself in harm's way. Okay? So let's talk a little bit, switching gears, sexual harassment. This is a source of conflict that must be taken seriously. This once was a secretive and feared problem, but due to the media coverage of, prominent individuals, this issue is brought to the forefront. The majority of the cases are against women, but there's a number of cases involving men as the victim. That number is growing. And with that said, it's not just men that are in positions of power and control. We have very powerful women, and so it puts itself at men can be the victim as well. Simply put, its conduct typically experienced as offensive in nature, in which unwanted sexual advances are made in the context of a relationship of unequal power or authority. Okay? The person that is harassing you usually has power and authority over you, and they're doing it as a power issue. Okay? Victims are subjected to sexually oriented verbal comments, unwanted touching, and requests for special favors. Unfortunately, the advances are such that it requires the employee to submit to demands in order to get a special favor, a promotion, a great work schedule. So they're pressured into, giving into the advances, if you will. And all of that does is create a hostile work environment. That's where the atmosphere is so uncomfortable or so offensive by virtue of the advances, the requests, or the innuendos that it amounts to a hostile work environment. And that's not to be tolerated and put up with, and, they're not going to do anything. You got to tell someone. And if you witness your coworker experiencing this, you got to speak up. You got to help them. Okay, so what are we going to do about this sexual harassment? The direct approach always works best, in my opinion. Ask them to stop. Put it in writing, stating that you've asked them to stop. I'd keep a journal with, the exact times, the location, who would have been nearby that would have witnessed this. Tell other people. Now, I'm not saying go out and start gossiping or talk about it at the desk, but confide in someone that you trust. Tell them what's happening and what you've done about it, okay? If it doesn't stop, then you file an informal complaint. And the goal here is to stop the harassment. It's just to stop it, but not punish the perpetrator, okay? But if all else fails and they won't stop, then you might have to file a formal grievance, and that's that's where we go to court, and you'll have to sit and tell this again. Bottom line is there's a need to exercise power and control rather than sexual desire. Okay, the motive is to exert power. Now, if the harassment is not power-driven, telling them to stop usually clears it all up and you're good to go. If it is power-driven, it'll continue as long as you're passive. So until you speak up, it may continue on. And unfortunately, the victim chooses to be passive out of fear, embarrassment. They're afraid that they're going to be ridiculed. They're worried about their job security. Overall goal is to resolve this in a constructive, positive manner, and long-term effects we hope will be minimal. Okay, but you don't have to put up with this. You really don't have to put up with this. Okay, now we're going to switch gear. As nurses, we've got to be culturally diverse, we've got to be culturally aware, and culturally sensitive. This classroom right here is a very culturally diverse group of individuals. You're going to be working with a lot of different folks that don't think the way you do, perhaps have very different beliefs, different values. So if we were all just alike, wouldn't that be boring? I think so. So I think that it provides a rich environment when we have such diversity. Okay? Let me share a little mnemonic, if you will, about culture. And it's the nursing approach. C is for consider your own cultural biases and how this affects your nursing care. You never let those biases get in the way of providing effective and adequate nursing care. The U is to understand the need to recognize cultural implications in planning and implementing nursing care. So you know what? We've got to recognize that there are certain beliefs and certain implications that we've got to consider when we're providing care. L, learn how to utilize cultural assessment tools. There may be some facilities that use some cultural assessment tools. Not all of them do, but, you might want to ask them, oh, that's an interesting last name. If it's a different last name, where are you from? And, are there any particular cultural, spiritual preferences that we need to be aware of? So that's kind of how you approach that. Okay? T, treat clients with dignity and respect. It doesn't matter of what culture they are. Everyone gets treated with respect and dignity. The U is use sensitivity in providing culturally competent care. Be sensitive. Okay? Be sensitive. R, recognize opportunities to provide specific cultural-based nursing care. So if any time we can provide care that's culturally based, it's that much better. You'll find more compliance that way. Let's see. E, evaluate your own previous encounters with clients from other cultures and backgrounds. It's important that we respect our patients' differences and we try to abide by their rules or their cultural beliefs as much as possible, as long as it doesn't interfere with the care that we've got to give. Okay? In a few days, we're going to have Culture Diversity Day, or a couple of weeks. We're looking forward to that and having several of you present your culture and maybe bring a dish, and we'll just have a culture diversity party. How's that? So I have this list here. You'll find that in your book. Cultural and spiritual beliefs affecting nursing care. Now, this is not an all-inclusive list. This is just a few little, couple little blurbs about each of them. And if you're of this culture and you don't agree with this, then okay, but this is straight from your book, and not everybody has the same cultural beliefs. It's within a culture. Not everybody has those same practices. So just something to think about. And this is from your Nursing Today book. Your Asian Pacific Islander. Usually the oldest male is the decision maker and the spokesperson for the family. So if when you're talking about healthcare, we've got to go to the oldest male to get some information. Chinese usually use herbalists, spiritual healers, and occasionally physicians for care. Okay? Your Japanese believe that physical contact with blood, skin diseases, and corpses will cause illness. So we've got to be real careful when we're drawing lab from them, right? Hindu and Muslim, they blend modern and traditional practice with their medical beliefs. Indians and Pakistanis do not acknowledge a diagnosis of severe emotional illness or mental retardation because it reduces the chance of other family members getting married. Vietnamese are slow to trust authority figures due to their refugee experiences. Okay? Although home remedies are tried first, they're compliant with Western health care treatment and once they seek it. So if they ever come to the doctor, then they're pretty compliant. Your Hispanic Latinos, older family members are consulted on issues regarding health and illness. Illness is viewed as God's will or divine punishment resulting from sinful behavior. How about that? Your American Indian, let's see. They value cooperation, family, and spiritual beliefs. There's strong ties to family and tribes. Illness is prevented through ritual and prayer. So that's just to name a few. Little cultural tidbits, if you will. Again, we're going to have Cultural Diversity Day in just a couple of weeks, and look forward to that. And this concludes the workplace violence, little cultural diversity lecture. Thank you. Bye-bye.